Hi everyone, welcome to Quantum Lucid. Today we're going to talk about a few things surrounding manifesting and reality creation and conscious creation. In the last few recordings, I talked about how consciousness works, what it really is, what this is all about, lucid dreaming, and one of the things that I wish was more clear in the manifesting community and more, I wish it was more popularized as a topic rather than just get this in 24 hours and do that. What's really going on is there's infinity, that I am, or consciousness, is constantly everywhere, everything all at once. Everything, everywhere, all at once. That's what's going on. But we can only experience through our dream vessel, the vessel that consciousness is dreaming, called your name. We can only experience something like 0.0001%, a very small portion of the whole picture. And that's all right. That's exactly how we conduct our lives and how we experience desired outcomes and how we get what we want and how we enjoy and experience success or failure and so on. So we are never technically getting the whole picture. However, when people come into conscious manifesting, usually something undesirable has objectified and demonstrated or displayed in their 3D screen of space. In other words, in the outer, so-called outer conditions or circumstances, which, as we all know, is still solidly real to the vessel, but it's not reality because it can be changed. However, once an undesirable condition has surfaced and manifested, we try to change it. We struggle. We try to manipulate it. We try to coax it, fix it, and then we get frustrated and sad and experience pain and suffering, and it perpetuates that specific condition and everything surrounding it. It perpetuates it furthermore and keeps it stuck and solid in the reality that you are in. So in other words, if you want something to become solid and permanent, so-called, in your world, you can try to get rid of it, you can try to fix it and struggle with it, and it'll just plant itself deeper. So now that you understand what's going on, people then look to conscious manifesting, hoping they can change the circumstance. And yes, you can, but not how we are taught change occurs. We are taught that change occurs by attending to the object that needs to be changed. In other words, if you want to change the color of a car, you go to a paint shop and they paint it a different color. Well, that's not how reality creation works. I mean, you can try to manipulate, kidnap your person and force them to love you and those kind of things, but we know that stuff is not doable for everyone and it doesn't really always work out. So how do we get to our desired outcome without the mass and in a proper way that actually gives us exactly what we desire. Well, you do that by understanding that there are different versions, that there is nothing permanent, so to speak. So going back to the topic of you're only experiencing 0.0001% means that everything is going on at the same time simultaneously. Now, let's just visit this sentence one more time. Everything is going on at the same time simultaneously. Now let's think about this. What does that mean? It means you are currently 5 years old and living in that house that you grew up in and doing 5-year-old things. But you tell me that, wait, no, I'm 30-something right now. That's not possible. Well, that's where you're wrong. That is exactly what's physically going on at the same time. Okay, so let's just put this into perspective one more time. Everything is going on at the same time simultaneously. Again, you are 90 years old, sitting at a dinner table with your grandchildren and great-grandchildren. But you tell me, wait, no, I'm 30-something. I'm not even married. Well, that doesn't mean that 90-year-old you with your great-grandchildren at dinner is false. He or she is actually physically, solidly real right now and taking place simultaneously. But this is something we were never meant to grasp. As products of this third dimension, we cannot grasp anything that defies the logic and constraints within this third dimension. Time, space, permanence, one world is all that we know. We never see multi-worlds together. You'll never look up in the night sky and see multiple Earths lined up against each other, saying, oh, okay, this is multiverse number 1, that's multiverse number 2. We'll never experience it that way. You can only experience one version or one reality at a time. And why is that? I'm not quite sure. Maybe we'll get into that. But understandably, it's because we are a singular physical point or vessel that is, again, a dream garment for I am, who is experiencing a singular type of life. A life experience that they are attached to. So when undesirable circumstances, events, conditions occur, whether you foresaw it or whether it was an accident or whether it took you by surprise, it doesn't mean you consciously invoked it, and doesn't mean that you called it in and affirmed for it. You never really affirm for bad things to happen. You never sit there and do 20,000 chants for your cat to die. You could, but it's rarely the case that we do these things for certain things to happen. And then we question why. The best answer to that is because I am is everything all at once. It doesn't distinguish, it doesn't differentiate, it doesn't discriminate. That's the word. I am, or consciousness, does not discriminate between good, bad, ugly, moral, immoral. It doesn't matter to it because it is everything. We are the ones who judge. So, coming back to the point where we've come to conscious manifesting because we're seeing something displayed and demonstrated that is against our liking, that is against our desire, that is against our will, and we struggle and we try to fix it, and we try and try and try, and we get sad and frustrated. So that's where most people are who are looking into conscious manifesting, and that's okay. And then once you understand, the only choice you have is to step in to another you. Again, coming back to the idea of multiverse, let's say in each version of Earth, there is a very close together, similar looking you that is living and walking in that Earth. They've been to the same school, they look almost exactly like you, they wear the same clothes, they have the same parents, they have the same friends, they eat the same foods, but the undesired event that you experience that has objectified in your current 3D or your current world did not occur in that other you's world. So now you should be getting the picture. And that's a real you. That's a very solidly real you. It's not made up. So now let's take this concept a little bit further so you can understand it. There is another you who has never experienced the bank balance that you have right now, which let's just say is quite low. But they have always experienced a very high bank balance. And that's a real fact for them, whether it's through gifts or luck or investments or work, whatever. But you, on the other hand, are considered economically and socially poor because your bank balance is, let's just say, 2 digits. Okay, maybe it's like $90 or $99. Whereas the other you has, let's say, $900,000 or 9 million. Doesn't matter. But those are facts. Those are factual, actual people. But they're called you. They have the same name, they wear the same clothes, but you will never cross paths with them. In other words, you can't walk out on the street and bump into another you and say, oh, wait, who are you? And they'll say, who are you? That happens in movies, but you can't see yourself in your natural environmental world. So what's really going on? We are subject to visible and invisible going-ons. So we are subject to visible, meaning eyes and senses of this body, versus invisible, meaning the eyes and senses and the brain of this body cannot perceive it or cannot objectively, visually, sensorily interact with it. Let's just say, put it that way. So we are in visible and invisible territory at the same time, meaning I am consciousness is everything, everywhere, all at once. To it, everything is equal, indiscriminate, happening at the same time. It does not see visible, it does not see invisible, it does not see 1%, it does not see 2%, it's infinity, it's limitless, it's everything. So your 90-year-old you and the 30-year-old you and the 5-year-old you and the very multimillionaire, rich you versus the poor you. Everything all in between is simultaneously occurring physically. And to I am, they are all equal and same. So consciousness does not know that one thing is invisible and the other is visible. It only knows everything, all at once, everywhere. So we are limited by this vessel and its constraints, thinking something is out of reach while something is permanent and solid. So there is an invisible and a visible world going on. And we are trying to bridge the gap, so to speak, to bring the invisible into visibility while the undesired vanishes off. So what exactly are we doing? We are not making anything vanish off or not bringing something. We are occupying and giving attention and awareness to the other us, sometimes known as the identity or version, who is experiencing that exact life in a factual and physical manner. But they are unaware of this struggling, failed, unsuccessful, suffering us right now. Okay, so that should give you some perspective. Equally, there is a you who is, let's just say, something very drastic. You are a mass murderer in a high security prison right now in another world. But you'll say that's impossible because you're not aware of that you. Because your current choices and decisions and circumstances indicate that you go to work, you've led a fairly good life, you have other hobbies, these are your interests. That just could never be you. And that's correct. You don't identify with that version of you. However, that does not nullify the existence of that you physically in another multiverse. Most people don't want to hear this, and it's understandable. But in order to understand how you make the invisible desired outcome visible, you have to understand that you are still everything. And just because it is invisible or something that you are totally unaware or unattached or unidentified with does not make it unreal to I am, does not make it cease out of existence, does not make it stop existing, does not throw it away out of infinity. It will still remain, and you will still continue on in that life. There's nothing you can do about it other than never identify with that version of you, because very likely you do not want that life. So that brings me to the next point. How do you become that you who is the multimillionaire or who has the desired circumstances that are the flip version of this current circumstance? Easy. You identify with that version by mere knowledge, and information, which is what I'm giving you, of the fact that you physically and factually exists right now. And your job is to only identify with that. Now, it's very likely from time to time we'll drop in the middle, or you'll look at current circumstances and get yanked back into the drama. But that's just the illusory bait. Your job is to constantly get back up and remain focused on the end scene, the end zone, the end goal, so to speak, through a visual or an imaginary scene or something that indicates the frame from that other timeline. So you are to only light up that desired end frame or end scene from that desired version of you, that timeline. Now, how that happens, usually if you are able to consistently, and I say consistently, wake up with that image and scene through your daily happenings, the surroundings, the environment around you begins to behave in a manner which indicates things are changing. And this is where time and space comes into play, because it is the constraints that this realm, this third dimension, behaves on. Now, some objectifications are very instant and very fast, while others are not. It's usually your straight line and pure attention towards your end scene that determines how fast, so to speak, something occurs in your reality. And that pure straight line can happen without interruptions of the illusory current scene, the illusory current bait, the illusory current conditions, even though they are actually solidly, physically real to us. You must render them illusory. That is the only way you can reach above and remain focused, again, focused on your end zone, end scene. And that's where the gap is in the teachings and this community, where they don't explain to you how you remain there day in and day out, despite, the word is despite, the current conditions. So, again, your job is to focus on the end scene. This is the only way the current conditions seemingly dissipate or disappear, and what appears are your desired conditions. So we are not changing anything. We are simply zooming in and making appear the conditions we want because they're already there in existence. The version of you who is experiencing the $9 million or is living life with their chosen person is walking and talking on an earth exactly looking like this one right now, physically. That's a fact. That's not imagination. That's a fact. And with that knowing, your only job is to keep knowing that. Nothing needs to change. In what's in front of you, things don't need to change. They will remain the way they are. Get this very clearly. Current conditions don't change. You cannot change anything out of infinity. What happens is you collapse one version and zoom in into another. Those circumstances continue on for eternity, infinity, who cares? They continue on. That you in those circumstances also continues on in that world. But what shifts? That's why we call it shifts, not changes. What shifts is your awareness. Your focused, strong, illuminated awareness is what shifts. It shifts into the world of your desire, which is very similar looking. The characters that are going to be in that world are almost exactly similar to the characters of others in this world, but they are not the same. They are versions, because your physical you is also versional. There is no one prime default original physical you. You're always versions. So I'm going to leave it at that. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. Join my community, and I will talk to you in the next video.